on behalf of the Friends of the World War II Memorial and also for the National Park Service, we welcome you out here for this 80th commemoration of Pearl Harbor, 80 years. And also, couldn't have a better backdrop for this morning's ceremony, this magnificent memorial for all of those who served and sacrificed during World War II. I'm honored to be your master of ceremonies this morning. It's nice being back in the pandemic. We haven't been back for a couple of years, so it's nice being face-to-face with everybody and getting a chance to see you. And it was 80 years ago at this time, 7:55 Hawaii time, a lot warmer there than it is here, although yesterday was a lot warmer. But at 7:55 Hawaii time, all the ships, more than 100 of them in port at Pearl Harbor, and all of a sudden the skies were littered with Japanese fighters and bombers. 300 planes dropping torpedoes and bombs on our ships. And when it was over, of the 100 ships that were there, close to 30 of those ships were either damaged or sunk. And more than 2,400 men were dead, 1,000 wounded, and it forever changed the fate of our nation, putting us into World War II. Behind me are veterans that you're going to meet as this ceremony is going to go on, and hopefully you'll celebrate with me and get really loud and clap and cheer for them as well as we introduce some of these veterans from World War II. But sadly, over the years, we've lost so many veterans that were a part of history and could tell you firsthand what it was like to be at Pearl Harbor. It's my pleasure right now, I'd like to introduce to you the official party. From the National Park Service, Superintendent of the National Mall and Memorial Parks, Mr. Jeffrey Reinbold. Former Chair of the Friends of the National World War II Memorial, retired Army Lieutenant General Mick Kicklighter. Representing the Maritime Administration is Mr. Kevin Tokarski, the Associate Administrator for the Strategic Sea Lift. From the Military District of Washington, our chaplain for today's event is Chaplain Commander Thomas O'Flanagan. Very talented actress and singer, Mary Melvin. 80 years ago today, the world woke up to the sound of radio. We didn't have phones, we didn't have computers, television was spotty in a lot of places, but a lot of folks had radio. And this is what they heard 80 years ago.
Mr. Vice President, Mr. Speaker, members of the Senate and of the House of Representatives, yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
You've heard of a 21-gun salute. In the Navy, it is a 21-bell chime. Now, if you are able to do so, please rise for the presentation of colors and the playing of our national anthem by the United States Navy Ceremonial Band. Please do remain standing as the colors depart. We have the invocation by our Chaplain O'Flanagan.
Let us pray. Eternal Father, as we recall the attack on Pearl Harbor 80 years ago today, we reflect on the undying virtues lived out by those sons and daughters of our nation. Their immediate heroic actions revealed their deep sense of responsibility to God and country. They laid down their lives in service and preserved our freedoms. Some of those servants you called suddenly back to yourself 80 years ago this day at this time. Others you called home during the war, and still others who, though few, remain with us today as faithful witnesses of the particular hope and protection that you provide to those who call to you in times of darkness. Lord, we ask that you embrace their souls as we humbly pray with grateful hearts for all the gifts and blessings that you have bestowed on our nation, the United States of America. Let us never forget those heroic souls and the true cross of freedom. Grant eternal rest to those brave men and women, our nation's heroes, and give them peace that you alone can provide. Bring healing and consolation to service members and their families who carry the wounds of that attack and the memories of war. As we are privileged to know the few remaining witnesses of Pearl Harbor, grant the millions of visitors to this monument the necessary humility to find strength and courage in the virtues required to remain faithful to the highest ideals and hold fast to what endures in an ever-changing world. We know that times of crisis will always arise. In your mercy, strengthen those who now stand the watch, the same courage that you gave those whom we remember today. O Lord, give us the faith and strength that will inspire our republic with leaders filled with integrity, honesty, and hearts dedicated to defending and preserving the dignity and freedom of all people. Lord, teach us goodness, discipline, and wisdom, and these gifts will keep us from becoming hardened by evil, weakened by laziness, or ignorant because of foolishness. Bless our nation to bring forth decisions that lead to authentic, lasting peace. Actions anchored in your holy truth ensure that we do not compromise integrity when assailed by evil forces. Instead, let us spend each day honoring their service by sustaining efforts dedicated to patriotism, freedom, and peace. Let our nation, on their memory, reflect on the faith and commitment for each other. Let us rededicate ourselves to their memory and sacrifice. Eternal Father, bless our country, those who serve and all who strive to bring truth and freedom throughout the world. May we always reflect your direction. Establish peace among those of goodwill, pass from victory to victory against those who wish us harm, and grant confusion to our enemies. We pray in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. Please be seated. It really is an honor to be with you this morning, and a huge celebration, too, for these veterans who have joined us. Over the years, we've had lots of veterans that have come from World War II to be with us today. And today we have an honor flight program that is with us today from Austin, Texas. Now, we're sorry we couldn't give you the warm weather you have down in Texas, but it is nice having you here with us today. I'd like to ask for a moment for all of us to remember Senator Bob Dole before we go on. Bob Dole, if you know, passed away Sunday morning at the age of 98 years old. And this memorial you see behind me, this magnificent memorial, with all of these pillars representing the states and territories that contributed to World War II, Bob Dole was an integral part in making this happen. Building a monument in D.C., I'm not sure if you know how hard that is, the red tape in Washington. It's 10 times harder when you're talking about a memorial. And putting it between the Washington and the Lincoln, can't imagine how difficult that must have been. But Senator Bob Dole was able to do that. He has a distinguished record of public service, which started as a young man when he was with the 10th Infantry in the Mountain Division in Italy. He was gravely wounded. They didn't even think he would survive. And when he came home, he dedicated himself to public service and became a senator, longtime senator, and somebody who understood what it was to give selflessly to his nation. And throughout his life, he truly embodied the values of what we've known now as the greatest generation. Through his military service and both with his public service life, Senator Dole played that crucial role in making this memorial come together and happen. A number of other people obviously played a big part, but Senator Dole played a very integral part in putting it right where we see it today, which I think is the perfect location when you think about the commitment and the sacrifice of so many. The World War II Memorial Campaign raised funds for the building of this memorial through private contributions, but obviously a lot of influence at the time from Senator Dole. Thank you to Senator Dole's tireless work and dedication and the creation of this memorial. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his wife, Elizabeth, at this time, and to his family as well. And following the 2004 dedication of the National World War II Memorial, if you were to come out here on any given Saturday, you would see Senator Dole out here shaking hands with veterans that would come out here. Some were in the honor flights, and some would just come out to take hold of what they helped build as far as their sacrifice and service. And he would be here on Saturdays. That's how he spent his days, shaking their hands and sharing stories with other veterans. To Bob Dole, maybe a moment of silence to say thank you for all he did and all he represented, if you would join me. Thank you. The Friends of the National World War II Memorial privileged to co-host today's ceremony with the National Park Service. They do a brilliant job in keeping this place pristine and beautiful. It is an impressive memorial. Many just come out to gather and reflect, and it's a perfect place to do that. We are honored to have with us today the Superintendent of the National Mall and Memorial Parks, who ensures that it stays pristine and beautiful, is Mr. Jeffrey Reinbold.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the National Park Service, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to the World War II Memorial for the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. We gather this afternoon to remember and honor the nearly 2,400 individuals who died on December 7th, 1941, the opening chapter of a war in which more than 400,000 U.S. servicemen would make the ultimate sacrifice. As Jonathan mentioned, and I'm going to repeat some of these because Senator Dole was important to us as well, we were deeply saddened by the passing of Senator Dole, a longtime supporter of World War II veterans and of this memorial. He served as the chairman of the national campaign to raise the private contributions to largely construct the memorial. But his support continued long after 2004. For years, he was a regular visitor and a fixture on Saturday mornings, greeting veterans, welcoming them to the site, telling stories to our volunteers and to our rangers here. He'll be sadly missed. While we mourn his loss, we do celebrate that this memorial is part of his legacy, which will continue to inspire and educate present and future generations about the accomplishments of all those that led the Allies to victory in the Second World War. The National Park Service is proud to work with the Friends of the National World War II Memorial, our partner in managing the memorial and in sponsoring today's event. And with us today is Lieutenant General Mcgee, former chairman of the Friends. Sir, we thank you for your service to our nation and are honored to have you join us again for the ceremony. I would like to also thank those representatives of the World War II allied nations who have joined us this afternoon. America was proud to march alongside its allies in the fight against tyranny, started 80 years ago, and are deeply appreciative of your attendance. And a special welcome to the almost 20 World War II veterans who are here in attendance. As we mentioned, many of them are from Austin, Texas, and join us as part of a commemorative honor flight sponsored by Honor Flight Austin. Gentlemen, we're honored by your presence and offer a simple, heartfelt thank you. There are no words, no tribute or honor. It is truly sufficient to recognize what you and your comrade in arms did and have done for our nation. President Franklin Roosevelt's message to Congress following the attack on Pearl Harbor is among the most famous in American history. And his opening lines describing December 7th, 1941 as a date which will live in infamy, is among the most well-known phrases of the 20th century. But it is in the conclusion of that brief speech, after he laid out the reasons the United States should go to war, that FDR identified how the war would be won. He said, with confidence in our armed forces, with unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph. And those are the very things that ultimately carried the United States and its allies to victory, and that the National Park Service commemorates and honors here at the World War II Memorial. The 16 million Americans who served in the armed forces of the United States during World War II, and the millions who supported them here on the home front. December 7th, 1941 was without question the defining moment of a generation, an event for which everyone could tell you exactly where they were when they first heard the news. But now, 80 years on, there are fewer and fewer Americans who have that firsthand memory of this event. Today, for example, there are only 2 survivors of the USS Arizona still alive. Nationwide, 95% of us were born after December 7th, 1941. Our direct connections to that day of infamy and to the World War II era as a whole will soon flicker out. That is precisely why this very special memorial is so important. Here is where we provide a place for succeeding generations who are the beneficiaries of the struggle and sacrifice of the greatest generation, to recall, to learn about, and be inspired by their deeds. Here, we summon the memory of the people cherished and dearly missed, and strengthen the unity of a nation well-loved and worth defending. And here, as the memorial wall behind me reminds us, we mark the price of freedom. As the nation's storyteller, the National Park Service is proud to be custodian of this memorial, and we are honored to be entrusted with the care of the memory of the men and women, military and civilian, who made victory possible. We are privileged to share the stories of their heroism and explain how the America we know today and the blessings we enjoy as free people were shaped by their deeds. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir. Founded in 2007 by the creators of the National World War II Memorial and dedicated to teaching the lessons of yesterday to unite a generation of tomorrow, the Friends of the National World War II Memorial proud to join the National Park Service in bringing together individuals of all ages, backgrounds, for national ceremonies like this one here today, and for educational programs centered around the themes of unity and spirit and community, in the hopes that maybe a younger generation will get excited about history and start to study what has happened in our past, so that obviously when they say we are doomed if we don't study our history and know it well, so that we're not going to repeat it. The Friends of the National World War II Memorial, privileged to have great leaders helping us guide our mission, leaders like retired Army Lieutenant General Mcgee, a decorated Vietnam veteran. General Kicklighter has served in many leadership roles as commander of the U.S. Army Western Command and Army Pacific, and as Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Defense. I'm very pleased to ask to come to the podium General Kicklighter.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the Friends of the National World War II Memorial, we thank you for joining us as together we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, which thrust this nation into the most destructive war in history, World War II. And as has been said several times before, we want to give a special thanks and welcome to our honored guests today, our World War II veterans. This is your memorial, and you honor us by being here and letting us share this ceremony with you. Thank you so much for coming and being here. A very sincere thanks to the National Park Service and to our superintendent, who is a co-host for today's ceremony. The Park Service continued partnership with us helps us strive to make sure that we remember all the key events at ceremonies like this throughout the year, and they keep this memorial in such beautiful condition. Thank you very much. We're here today to pause and to remember and to honor the men and women who 80 years ago were safeguarding our nation at Pearl Harbor and other military installations on the island of Oahu in Hawaii. At 7:53 a.m. on Sunday morning, December the 7th, 1941, without warning and without provocation, the Japanese launched a massive air attack against Pearl Harbor and the other military bases on that island. And when that attack ended, as you've heard earlier, more than 2,400 Americans lost their lives. We gather here today to remember Pearl Harbor and the other installations on Oahu and honor those who received the first blow, the first strike in World War II, and we remember their families. And also today we remember those who served on the home front. As you've heard earlier by the superintendent, this memorial is truly a sacred place in our nation. It's a place we come to visit. We come to remember those who served and sacrificed. We come to reflect and commemorate the defining moments of that war at this memorial. And as the superintendent also said, we come to learn so that we can reinvest that knowledge in helping keep this nation strong and free. This memorial honors 16 million men and women who served in the armed forces in World War II. But it also specially remembers those 400,000 men and women who never returned home. And as was pointed out earlier, those 400,000 are represented by the gold stars behind me. This memorial also remembers the home front, where millions of people rallied together almost overnight, not only to support our troops, but they supported our allies around the world and kept them in the fight. The World War II generation that we honor today fought the most destructive war in history. More than 60 million people lost their lives, mostly women, children, and the elderly who got overrun that war. They fought and they won that war, and they saved this nation. And with our allies, they literally saved the world. This memorial says in a very special way, because it was built by the people of America, and it says for the people of America to the World War II veterans that your service will never be forgotten. And we especially remember the 400,000 who gave all their tomorrows. And when you're only 18 or 19 years old, all your tomorrows is a very high price to pay. But they paid that price so that we could live in this strong, free, and beautiful America. And as it's been pointed out before, there's no way for us to adequately thank or honor those men and women who gave us this great nation. But what we can do is dedicate ourselves to ensure that we pass on this freedom to generations yet to come. As I close, let me again say how honored we are that we have so many World War II veterans with us this morning. You make this ceremony so very special. Thank you again for coming and being with us. I'd like to just ask the Lord to continue to bless all these veterans, these World War II veterans, their families, and all of our veterans. And I would ask the good Lord to protect those who are in uniform who serve us and protect the families they too often leave behind. God bless America, and thank you very much for coming and being with us.
I want to take a few seconds here, if I can, and introduce you to some special guests that are with us today. A warm welcome to the veterans, guardians, and staff from the Honor Flight, Austin, Texas. Let's give them a warm welcome. We don't say howdy, y'all, here in D.C., but it's nice having you here. Colonel Stephen Kuchar, the Assistant Defense Attaché, is with us as well. Where are you, sir? Nice to have you with us. It's a French name, and I apologize if I butchered that. Commodore Phil Nash, who's the Naval Attaché of the British Embassy, is with us. Sir? Look how shy they are. Please stand if I call your name, just really. Commodore David Gibbs, he's the Defense Attaché from the New Zealand Embassy. Please stand, sir. Going to have to find the attaché game here. Also, Mr. Jamie Ramon Escalon Jr., Deputy Chief of Mission of the Philippine Embassy. We thank you for being here, sir. Good to have you. Leadership from the Daughters of the American Revolution. DAR has been a great supporter of World War II veterans of this memorial. Where are the representatives from the Daughters of the American Revolution? Ladies, good to have you here. Thank you. From the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Pacific Remote Island Marine National Monument is a refuge system. Our Chief, Cynthia Martinez, representing Wake Atoll, Midway Atoll, and Howland Island, which were also attacked December 7th. Nice having you. Also joining us today are representatives of the Friends of Midway Atoll in remembrance of those killed and wounded during the first bombardment of Midway, which was December 7th, 1941. Good having you. Just real quick, and because I'm a history lover, I was a history major, I love it, but I think a lot of kids coming up today, when they ask about Pearl Harbor, and I say to them, listen, December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor was the primary focus for the Japanese. They wanted to cripple our Pacific Fleet in hopes that it would take our capacity and maybe think in their minds they won't fight back. They'll just stand to the side. But they also attacked Guam, the Philippines, Midway, Wake Island. They went after these areas as well to try and limit our capacity. Admiral Yamamoto, who was in charge of the Japanese Navy, and he was the one who basically masterminded the whole Pearl Harbor attack, and maybe you've heard about this, but he studied English at Harvard. He was a C student, but he studied English at Harvard. And during his time there, he hitchhiked at some point down to Texas. He wanted to learn about the infrastructure of America and the American people. What he gravely underestimated when he put together the Pearl Harbor attack and thinking that America would stand by the sidelines by limiting our capacity and taking the fight out of Americans was the resolve of Americans. Because after that attack, and he realized that a lot of the ships that weren't sunk were put back together in real quick fashion and put back in the water and ready to fight, at some point he was quoted as saying, "I fear that we have woken a sleeping giant." How right he was. And just to give you one illustration, and this isn't just the military might, but the American might, when people in this country come together and decide to put their heads together and get something done. The B-24, one of our fighting planes at the time, a bomber, has 500,000 moving parts on it. They were rolling those planes off an hour off the assembly line that usually had cars coming off that assembly line. And 4 years after Pearl Harbor started the war, where their attack was mostly on our battleships, sinking the Arizona and also the Oklahoma, the Japanese surrendered aboard one of our battleships, the USS Missouri, ending the war. Gravely underestimating what American might can do when we work together, put politics aside, and fight for a common cause. I'd like to give a shout out to a very special individual who is not with us today, and I've had the good fortune of meeting several times, and if you've ever met him, he makes you smile because he is just sharp as a tack and he's funny, but when you hear about his life of service, it's truly amazing. Is Brigadier General Charles Mcgee. He turned 102 years old today. A round of applause for 102 and still sharp as a tack. He is one of the last living members of the Tuskegee Airmen, an all-African-American military pilot group who fought during World War II. This gentle warrior served more than 30 years, flew a total of 409 combat missions in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, one of the highest combat totals, and one of the longest active duty careers by any Air Force fighter pilot in history. The Friends of the National World War II Memorial recently named a special award for him. It is the Brigadier General Charles Mcgee Unity Award, which is presented annually to an individual or group actively working for the betterment of the community and beyond, for living up to the spirit and unity of shared values present during World War II. When Americans were at their very best and most unified in their fight against authoritarianism, fascism, and racism. General Mcgee is not with us today. He had another engagement. But how about on the count of three, we yell out a big happy birthday? How's that sound? You ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday, General Mcgee. Woo! And I'll share one quick aside. Right there on that side of the pond, or this reflecting pool, General Mcgee was out here for one of these ceremonies. And I was standing waiting to talk to him, and he was telling a story to some youngster that came up to ask him questions. And they asked him what his call sign was during World War II, because he was one of the escort pilots of the fighters. And he said, well, I went by Red Tail. That was what I was known as. And this older gentleman with a cane, who was a bomber pilot, spins around and said, you're Red Tail. And he said, yes, sir, I am. He said, I'm Cottontail. These two had never met before except in the air flying combat missions in World War II. And right there on that side of the reflecting pool, these two had come together after all these many years and shared some fun stories about. Cottontail said, anytime I heard Red Tail was up flying with his guys, I felt so much better because you guys were really good pilots. So it's amazing what you have happen out here for us. I am pleased now to introduce a very special musical performance. We are privileged to have with us today a supremely talented actress and singer, Mary Melvin, who will perform a special tribute to our veterans.
Hello, everyone. God bless all of our veterans here today and all those watching today. While the storm clouds gather far across the sea, let us pledge allegiance to a land that's free. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair, as we lift our voices in this solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. America, it is the greatest country in the world. Yes, it is. God bless America. Come on, sing it with me. Land that I love, stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains today. God bless you.
I'm glad she said sing with me as opposed to sing like me. I would have hurt myself. That was fabulous. That was beautiful. Now, tremendously honored to introduce our esteemed guests and treasured heroes who have joined us today. And this is where you guys come in, all right? I know it's a little chilly, so if you clap really loud, it'll get the blood flow going. You'll warm you up just like that, all right? So let's get a little crazy for our esteemed guests, the World War II veterans that are with us today. I'll say your name, and if you can, please stand up for us so we can recognize you. Ira Rigger, who I helped find his seat over there. He's got VIP seating over there. Ira. He served in the Naval Construction Battalions, usually referred to as the Seabees in the Pacific, including the Battle of Guam, the Battle of Peleliu, and the Battle of Iwo Jima. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Rose Dern. Enlisted in the Navy back in 1942, volunteered for the Waves and served as a unit supervisor and volunteered to go to Hawaii to serve as a communications specialist. Who wouldn't serve in Hawaii? Come on now. Thank you for being with us. Theodore Ted Below. Ted, where are you? Thank you, sir. Served with the U.S. Marine Corps during World War II, spent 33 days on Iwo Jima during one of the bloodiest battles in Marine Corps history. The island hopping that happened there with Okinawa and Iwo Jima and Peleliu. The military intelligence at the time thought it would only take maybe a week or two for each of the islands. It took over a month for almost all. Jack Maroney. Jack. He was a seagoing Marine stationed on the USS Enterprise as a 20-millimeter aircraft gunner from 1943 to 45, serving in the Pacific Theater. Good to have you, sir. Harry Miller. He is a veteran of World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. He served in the U.S. Army with the 740th Tank Battalion during World War II, taking part in the Battle of the Bulge at just 16 years old. He also served with the Army in Korea and with the Air Force during Vietnam. Mr. Miller retired from U.S. Air Force in January 1966 as a senior master sergeant. Some inside knowledge on Harry. His maximum is 2 Stellas. Give him a third one, and he'll start missing the bus. Dixon Hemphill. Dixon. Good to have you here, sir. He joined the U.S. Navy in 1943. Sailed in the Atlantic from June of 1944 and December of 1944 as a turret officer. He sailed aboard the transport USS Butner from San Francisco to China, arriving in Shanghai back in January of 45. He remained in the Naval Reserve, retiring as a commanding officer of an intelligence division with the rank of lieutenant commander. Good to have you with us today, sir. Thank you. George Arnstein. George served with the U.S. Army's 76th Cavalry Reconnaissance Troop, mechanized in the European theater, including the Ardennes campaign, which is the Battle of the Bulge. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Huey Lamb. Besides having the best smile up here, Huey was a fighter pilot stationed in Duxford, England, flying the P-47 Thunderbolt and the P-51 Mustang. Beautiful planes. You missed flying those, don't you? Yes, sir. He was one of the first Americans to shoot down an Me-262 German jet fighter, and he ended the war as an ace. Ernest Columbus. Ernest served in the 28th Pennsylvania Army National Guard in the European theater, including the Battle of the Bulge. He transitioned to the Air Force and retired as a Master Chief in 1969. A life of service. Thank you, sir. Lou Griffith. Lou Griffith served with U.S. Army Air Force's 12th Air Force stationed in Sicily. He piloted a B-25 bomber on 25 successful missions over Italy. Good to have you, sir. 42? 42 missions? That was fake news. It was 42 missions. Thank you, sir. Jack Howard. Where are you, Jack? Jack went through numerous Navy flight and navigation schools before being stationed at Pearl Harbor. He was preparing for the invasion of Japan when that war came to an end. Jack, good to have you with us. Benjamin Mendoza. Benjamin Mendoza was a sergeant in the Army. He served in New Guinea and the Philippines. Sir, it's good to have you with us. Arthur Gertz. He's got his cowboy boots on. Love that. Served as a Navy coxswain delivering supplies in the Marshall Islands. Arthur, good to have you with us. Joe Barger. Joe, you're good, so you can sit down if you'd like. You can stand up, whatever you want to do. Where's Joe? Joe's right there. Joe was a Navy machinist mate who served off of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Sir, good to have you with us as well. Francis Kemp. U.S. Navy, South Pacific. Good to have you with us. Bill Robbins. Bill Robbins served in the Army's military police. He was stationed in Japan as a part of the occupation forces. Good to have you with us, sir. Monroe McCrumman. Monroe served with the U.S. Navy in the Pacific Theater. Bob Turner. Thank you, sir. Bob Turner, Lieutenant Commander of the U.S. Navy, serving as an aircraft maintenance officer in the South Pacific, supported land-based naval aircraft in New Guinea and in the Philippines. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time for all of our World War II veterans out here today. Before we go into our wreath-laying ceremony, which is the end of our program, can I just encourage, especially if there's any young people out here with us today, please feel free to come up to the World War II veterans, shake their hand, talk to them, ask them about their stories. It's living history in front of you. I see some younger children here today. Come up and ask them what they did and how they got involved in the military. These are stories that will impact you and live with you for a lifetime, especially when you start studying it in school. You'll say, I met somebody who actually served during 1941 to 45 and made a difference and actually saved our country. Because if you think about it, had we lost World War II, I think people lose sight of this. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Our entire country was on the table as we gambled, as we went into 2 theaters of operation, both in Europe and in the Pacific, which you can see here represented from the World War II Memorial. Had we not won, this would not be our United States of America. So they put everything on the line and they came away the victors. And these men and women helped do that. So please take some time and come up, talk to them, and get to know them, ask them what their story was. Thank you all for coming out this afternoon. And now is the time we prepare for the official wreath-laying ceremony here at the memorial.